Hello everyone. This is Dr. Ryan, Executive Consultant with Ambit Energy, here today to talk about how to overcome losing prospects to negativity on the internet. You know, a lot of times when we expose prospects to this business, they don't sign up right away. You know, oftentimes they want to go ahead and do their research. And as we all know, a lot of times when people say they're going to go ahead and do their research, they mean they're going to go ahead and go home and do their research, which is basically going online and Googling Ambit Energy. And, you know, as we all know, when you Google Ambit Energy, positive and negative information pops up on that Google search engine. And, you know, sometimes prospects tend to gravitate towards that negative information on the internet. You know, and oftentimes this information is simply unfounded. There's no evidence to back up some of these false claims. In some cases, it's just blatant lies from our competition. And, you know, the best way to handle negative information on the internet is to actually prepare your prospect for the negative information ahead of time before they actually encounter it. It's always better to be proactive than reactive to that. And you know, we should always inform our prospects of the bad and the good on the internet in regards to Ambit Energy before they actually begin their Google research. And what I'm going to do is, on this video, I'm actually going to go over a dialogue which can actually be used word by word or pretty much summed up to actually handle the losing prospects to negativity on the internet. You know, and this is the scene I want to set up here. So let's say we just finished showing the plan to a prospect. We showed the DVD, we showed the website, maybe we brought them to a live business presentation, and you know, at the end of that business presentation they said, you know, I just want to go home and I want to go do some research. I want to go look into this some more. You know, how many times have we heard that? And, you know, a lot of times, you know, our heart literally drops when we hear that. We get so scared that they're going to go online and they're going to find something negative. And, you know, we already know what's out there, positive and negative on the internet. And you know, how many times have we sent a prospect home after a business presentation and they call us up later that evening, the next day, or a couple of days later, and they say, well, you know, I'm not interested. I found some negative stuff on the internet. I found this complaint, that complaint. And how many times has that happened to us? And what we want to do is we want to overcome this problem before it actually happens. So this is the way I'm going to go about it. I'm going to give some simple dialogue and verbiage on how exactly I go about doing this. So let's say I'm the prospect, we just finished the business presentation Tuesday night, and I'm going to look at the prospect and they're going to say, hey, you ready to get started? And you know, they're going to say, well, you know, I want to go home, I want to do some research, I want to go ahead and look into this some more. And what I'm going to say, I'm just going to look them straight in the eyes and say, look, you know, I know because of some of the dialogue we're having that there's some interest in Ambit Energy, and you might get in, you might not, and that's totally fine. There's no pressure to get into Ambit. And what I can tell you is there's a level of interest sparked inside you. And here's where I'll lead in with the question, and I'll start to control this conversation. I'll say, look, would you do me a favor and do some research while making your decision? Now, what ends up happening here is I'm asking them to do research, knowing full well, regardless if I asked them or didn't ask them, they're going to go home and Google Ambit anyway. They're going to go online, they're going to put Ambit Energy into the internet, they're going to find positive, they're going to find negative, and their search is going to be typically undirected at this point in time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this opportunity to actually direct where I want them to place the emphasis on the research. So, and when you ask this question a lot of times, you know, psychologically it works really well, because a lot of times they'll pop up and they'll say, of course I want to do my research. Of course I'm gonna look into this thing, because people always rise to the occasion for questions like this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start to direct their research. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the negative. I'm going to handle that negative information on the internet that they might find right now before they can actually see any of it. So what I'm going to say is, look, hey Bob, look, I want you to start by Googling everything bad. I actually want you to start with the Google term Ambit scam. And what I'll tell you, Bob, is this. You know, in this direct marketing business, whether it's Tupperware, Avon, Mary Kay, it doesn't matter. You can Google the name of any direct marketing company and the word scam, and it's going to come up, because, you know, some people just think that this kind of direct marketing stuff doesn't work. And go ahead and Google it, and you're going to find some negative stuff. But, just like every major corporation in America, whether it be AT&T, T-Mobile, Best Buy, you can go online for all those companies and you can find a whole bunch of negative stuff. And what I'll tell you is most of the negative stuff on there are people that didn't pay their bills and they got their electricity shut off, and the way they feel they're going to get back at Ambit is they're going to go online and they're going to post in some blog and on some internet site that Ambit didn't do this right, didn't do that right. And it's the same for all those companies. Let it be AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, and so on and so forth. And if you look really hard on the internet, you might find about, I don't know, maybe 250, 300 complaints on the internet. And today in Ambit Energy, we have about 1.5 million active customers on the service. So if you go ahead and do the math on that, that's literally about a 0.01% complaint rate. And that's a pretty good complaint rate, wouldn't you agree? And what I'll do is I'll bob my head up and down and I'll say, wouldn't you agree? And obviously almost 100% of the time they'll say, yeah, absolutely, that's a good complaint rate. And now that's one of the keys, because I got them to agree that there's negative information on the internet, and I got them to agree that we have a pretty good complaint rate, which we absolutely do. And then I'll go into the positive. I'll start talking about the positive. I'll say, Bob, what I want you to do is I want you to take equal time. I want you to take about half an hour, and I want you to read all the positive stuff on the internet about Ambit Energy. I want you to take half an hour. I want you to read all the good. You're going to see a lot of incredible stuff. You're going to see we're the #1 fastest growing company by Inc. 500 magazine. You're going to see that we got recognized by J.D. Powers and Associates for being #1 in customer service. You're going to see that we have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. You're going to see that we were featured in the Wall Street Journal for doing $1 billion faster than Dell, Microsoft, and Walmart. You're going to see piles and piles of that stuff, and I want you to read those positive accolades that just can't be manipulated. I want you to read, all the awards and accolades we've gotten, because, you don't become a $1 billion company unless you're taking care of business properly. So you know what, Bob? You go do your research, you do your stuff on the internet, and you're going to see a whole bunch of stuff that's ranting and raving about how incredible Ambit Energy is. And you're going to find a lot of people that are competitors of ours that don't like the fact that we're doing so well, that's going to try to attack Ambit by posting in some kind of blog or chat room about how this doesn't work. Because, doing research on Google is kind of like writing on the bathroom stall. Anyone can write on it. But what I can tell you is there's a ton of evidence, including myself, where Ambit Energy is working. Now, here's a really important part of this conversation, and it's probably the most important part of this conversation. And this is something I took directly from my good friend Dave Fleet. And this is how I'm going to end this conversation. I'm going to say, because, Bob, wouldn't you agree you can find something negative about everything on the internet these days, right? And I'll bob my head up and down, up and down. And of course, they're going to come back and they're going to say, yes, absolutely. You can definitely find something negative about everything on the internet these days. And what I did is I installed an image. I installed this philosophy in their head. When they go online now, they're going to understand the fact that there's negative and there's positive on the internet. And now they're going to see things in perspective. They're going to look at the fact that not only are things negative and positive about Ambit Energy, but there's negative and positive about every corporation in the world today. Every billion-dollar corporation has some negative and has some positive. And, it's not just negative complaints about Ambit, it's negative complaints about every company. Whenever you get big, someone's always got something bad to say about you, and that's just that. And I'll look at Bob and I'll say, Bob, I just want you to see it. I want you to see everything bad. I want you to read everything good, because here's what I know, Bob. When you do your research, my guess is you're going to go ahead and chase me down to get into the spare time business. And, if not, there's no problem. There's no pressure. But I want you to come and educate it. I want you to do your research. Now, I really love this approach, because what we're doing is we're handling negative information before they get it. So you're not going to be scared the next day that you're going to get a phone call that they found some complaints on the internet. Because what I'll tell you is this, is if you handle those complaints on the internet after they see it, and you don't prepare them ahead of time for what they're going to read, you're going to have a lot of trouble because you're going to be in a defensive mode. And it's hard to get back from a defensive mode when they're backing you against the wall. You want to be straight up and straightforward. Now, I only do this approach if they're going to go home and do their research, or they're going to go online after a business presentation to actually go ahead and look up Ambit. And I do it in a very proactive manner to help me avoid all these obstacles. Now, a lot of times, you know, I see this all the time where you don't handle it up front. And they do go home and they Google Ambit after a business presentation, and they find some negative information on the internet, and they come back to you and they call you up and they said, well, you know, I went on such and such website and I found this, and I went on such and such website and I found that. And you get pushed into this corner, and they're hitting you with all this information, and you don't really know how to react. And a lot of times we become all defensive, and we start, you know, defending everything and going into that kind of stance. And well, what you want to do in that situation is, if you didn't handle the negative information on the internet ahead of time, this is the way you're going to want to handle it if you're actually going to be forced into this position, which you don't want to be forced into. But let's just say you do. So let's say, you know, Bob comes back to me and he goes online and he looks up some information, and he found something negative on the internet, some complaint on some blog post. You know, one of those blog posts where, you know, you have the first name of the person and they don't put their last name because it's not actually true. But anyway, so you're looking at Bob, and Bob says, I found some complaints on the internet. I'm going to look at Bob and I'm going to say, Bob, let me ask you a question. Who do you have for your electricity provider right now? And Bob might look at me and say, well, you know, I got Con Edison. And I'll say, great, Bob. Why don't you do this? Why don't you go on that website that you just went on and do the same exact research that you just did for Ambit, for Con Edison, and see if there's a definitive difference. And I'll leave them with that because, you know, they don't really think about it. Because the bottom line is, if they go ahead and they look up Con Edison here in New York City, and they compare the number and all the complaints they found about Con Edison, and then they look at Ambit, bottom line is complaints exist for every major company, a major corporation in America. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And, you know, one thing I'll tell you is this, you know, I was taught by a very smart guy, you know, you can't worry about everything in the world that you don't have control over. There's a lot of things in this world we have absolutely no control over, and we spend so much time worrying about these things that we have absolutely no control of. And information and negative information on the internet, you can't just go online and delete it. And so what we do have to take control over is what we can actually take control of. And one of the things we have the ability to take control of is how we prepare prospects that are going to go do research on how to go about doing that research, and actually steering them in the right direction, letting them know it's negative, letting them know it's positive, getting them to agree that there's pretty much something negative about every company on the internet these days, and then sending them home educated on how to go about doing that research. And, you know, I'll have a lot of, and at the end of the conversation, I might text them a few links. I'll text them the Inc. 500. I'll text them the Better Business Bureau. I'll text them the J.D. Power and Associates Award. I'll text them some articles about us doing $1 billion in revenue. So he'll actually have that information ready to go. And I'll include some of the links in the description below. And, you know, can't thank you guys enough for tuning in today. If this video helped in any way, feel free to share it. Go ahead and hit that subscribe link down below. Like the video. I appreciate you guys so much. I hope this information was able to help you guys out and help you handle that, how to overcome negativity on the information and avoid losing prospects to it. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the byways and highways of Ambit Energy.